Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Josie's Point of View, where we focus on human interest stories from the Carolinas and beyond. Today it's Saturday and it's March the 5th, 2022. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to my channel, I'd like to extend to you a warm welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you find the information here to be informative. And if you're a returning viewer, by all means, thank you for coming back. You know, I always say the tide changes so frequently here on these YouTube streets. So you always have to acknowledge where your support comes from. And I want you to know I sincerely thank you for your support. Feel free to like and to share this video. And don't forget to subscribe. And our story today comes from the city of Chadbourne here in North Carolina. Take a look at the headline. And it reads, Police Chief facing over 75 federal charges fakes his own death. I'll provide you with a summary, and as always, I'll place links to a few of the full articles in the description box. You know, sometimes the news story is just so unbelievable, it leaves you just wondering if it's even true. And those are the stories I try to step over, no matter how sensational they might be. I just step over them and move on to the next. And I have to tell you, this is one of those stories. This is one of those cases because the things that were being said and the picture that was being painted of this former police chief, I did not believe. It was just too much. And 1 year after I first saw this story in the news, the police chief is still in the news and the unbelievable stories have continued. But this time, I saw him being arrested as a fugitive, and reluctantly, I actually believe what is being said. Now, this may be a bit longer than most of my other videos, but trust me, it's going to be worth it. And today we're talking about the former police chief of Claiborne, North Carolina. His name is Anthony Spivey, and he was appointed chief of that North Carolina city back in 2018. Reports say he was first selected as interim chief, and after being on the job for several months, it was stated that he then became chief. And it was also mentioned that it was approximately 32 months on the job at the time the charges against him became public. Now, I first became aware of this case last spring when I saw this post here. I believe it was back in March of last year. It stated that the chief was being placed on administrative leave by the city manager, and the reasons listed was the loss of public trust. It was stated the acting city manager wanted to conduct an investigation, but he also stated no single event led to that decision, but that there were many things both inside and outside of the department that they were looking at. He also said that paid administrative leave had no time limit attached to it, but investigations would be ongoing and thorough. That immediately told me there was a lot of smoke to follow, and this was going to be a good one. I knew this was going to be something worth reporting. Then I saw this headline. It read, and it's essentially stated that the police chief was now facing an indictment for embezzlement of funds. And this would not be the only personal charges being made public. But in this case, it was stated that Spivey was designated as the point of contact for collection of funds from a public fundraiser, and the fundraiser was for a 14-year-old leukemia patient. I saw where it appears the fundraiser took place during the second week of August 2019, but apparently the money was never turned over to the intended recipient or his family. Now, I did not see the initial list of charges, but in addition to the embezzlement charge, the news source stated that Spivey was now facing 17 additional charges, and most of those charges involved stealing and selling guns that were the Chadbourne's Police Department evidence locker room and armory. That's where he got them from. And these thefts happened on more than one occasion. One report stated that in addition to the guns, it was alleged that Spivey also stole thousands of dollars as well as drugs from the evidence room, then that he also fraudulently purchased pills from local pharmacies over a 2-year period. And again, I'm saying allegedly. And then I saw this news report that says the chief was facing 110 charges. Now, let me say that I am capable of being an unbiased observer, but at that point, I stopped believing it. I did not believe what was being said. I didn't think it was true. And I have to tell you, my mind was pretty much made up because I know from experience, sometimes when you fall out of grace with an organization, they try to paint the most negative picture they can possibly get of you. I've seen that happen before, so in my mind, that's what I thought was happening. To me, there was no possible way the charges could all be true. No law enforcement officer could be that messed up. I started believing they were just trying to set him up. They were throwing the book at him, but then I had to acknowledge something. There were months and months of investigation taking place, and for someone at that level within law enforcement to be facing those charges, maybe some of it were true. Maybe there was some substance behind it, but I was still very skeptical. So, with my reluctant spirit in place, I decided that I would just go ahead and look at the list of charges, and all I could say was, oh my. Let me tell you some of what I saw. 36 felony counts of altering, stealing, or destroying evidence. 36 felony counts of embezzlement of state property by a public official. 8 felony counts of trafficking in opium and heroin. Did you hear what I just said, ladies and gentlemen? Our chief of police was a drug dealer, allegedly. 6 felony counts of obstructing justice, 5 felony counts of forgery of deeds or wills, 3 felony counts of obtaining a controlled substance by prescription, misrepresentation, 3 felony counts of obtaining property by false offense, 1 felony count of larceny by an employee, and it went on and on and on. And all I could say was, oh my. So facing all of these serious charges, needless to say, he was arrested. He was arrested in April of last year, and initially he was given a $550,000 bond, and as a condition, he was to wear a GPS monitor until his trial. But a trial date had not been set, and as additional charges were added, his bond increased to $750,000. But eventually, a few dozen charges were dropped, and that reduced the count to 75 charges. But that was by no means over. It was not the end. Trust me, there was much more to come. So Spivey was released from jail in September after posting $550,000 in bail. And while all that was going on, guess what? His house burned down to the ground. People say the fire happened just one day before the house was scheduled to be sold as a foreclosure. Reasons for the sale was that the taxes had not been paid in a few years, and this is one of the things that happen when you don't pay your property taxes. The government goes all out to get their money, and your house goes up on the foreclosure list. Reports say the sale was due to take place on the 16th, and the fire took place 9 hours earlier. And as you can see, the house was completely destroyed. The fire marshal stated the fire was deemed as suspicious because the house had no electricity. How interesting. So I'm wondering, did somebody intentionally set it ablaze? I'm just asking. But nonetheless, Spivey was out on bond, and then in January, he was charged with larceny after it was reported that he was allegedly caught stealing catalytic converter from a nearby auto shop. And at that point, I just threw my hands up. It was simply just too much. It was just too much. I could not believe it. I didn't think it was true. Okay. You see, we're talking about a young man, and he was young because he was age 36, but the fact that he had progressed in law enforcement to become the chief, and just a few months earlier, he was the police chief. He knows the law. How could this all be happening? No, something did not seem right to me. I just kept saying all of these charges simply could not be true. And then Spivey started coming up missing in action. First, they said he had missed an earlier court date when he fraudulently claimed he had COVID-19 and submitted a fraudulent note as proof. Oh my, I started being judgmental here. He was doing too much, and after that, there was a suicide note and some type of supportive evidence from his spouse who had an interview with investigators, and she created a scenario suggesting that Spivey had committed suicide. I smiled and shook my head. This could not be the end. I felt as if I was in the movies and I was just going along for the ride. So I started rooting for the underdog because it was exciting. Probably one of the most exciting things in my area for quite some time. And to be honest, I simply was not ready for the drama to end. But even though police were skeptical, nonetheless, they started investigating Spivey's disappearance as a suicide. And according to what police were told, Spivey went boating on the river a day earlier, and he left a note in his truck indicating that he was, he was considering taking his own life, that he wanted to die by suicide. But the boat was found empty, and Spivey he had a scheduled court appearance that Monday, but the authorities did not believe he had committed suicide. Nonetheless, an expensive search on that river was executed. They deployed helicopters, boats, and dive teams in their search for him, but they found nothing, and investigators suspected this was just another attempt to throw them off his chase, or at least to slow them down. The scheme seemed all to be staged, and they said the search cost taxpayers over $64,000. So a warrant was issued for his arrest when they realized, nah, this suicide attempt seemed awfully staged. And after 3 days of searching, they got a tip that he was in South Carolina at the home of one of his relatives. And shortly after midnight on February the 24th, they went to get him. And you won't believe this. Oh, well, you probably would. They found Spivey near an abandoned apartment complex in Lawrence, South Carolina, and he had submerged himself in a creek behind the building and threatening that he would have to shoot officers if they tried to arrest him. But officers eventually managed to get him out of the water and finally into restraint. I said, darn, it's finally over. What an exciting ending, but it's finally over, at least for now. And sadly, a law enforcement fugitive officer was caught, and now he's in FBI custody. I heard that a man and a woman were charged with a staged attempted suicide, but they probably were charged with tampering with evidence. But nonetheless, at the last report, I heard that Spivey was being held in Columbus County Jail with a $6 million bond. No knowledge of his court date, but let's be honest. This man will never see the light of day as a free man again. I won't be surprised if one day in the future he breaks out of jail and another chapter in the story gets started. But this was definitely one law enforcement drama that deserves a movie. With Spivey as the lead character, it deserves to be made into a movie. It was so good. And despite the seriousness of the things he's been accused of, he surely kept me entertained. I love following the story. It kept me entertained and I enjoyed every bit of it from start to finish. Okay, maybe I just have a strange sense of humor, but nonetheless, I was thoroughly entertained. But on a serious note, I'm sure the police department is very embarrassed and extremely happy to bring this chapter to a close. And there you have it, probably the best police drama that I have ever covered on this YouTube channel, and it was exciting. But that's all I have for you right now. Feel free to leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about this video, and by all means, feel free to like and to share it. And if you haven't done so already, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel by clicking on that red subscribe button. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if you click on the notification bell, you'll be the first to know whenever a new video is uploaded. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.